Okay. Kumlana Blatt Gemara. We're up to Daf Gimel. This is the Gemara for Shabbos Hagodlu. Let's think about it further. Tanya Hayra made 4 lines on the top of the page. Tanya Hayra said, Adam over Aveda B'Seisa, a person can commit a sin discreetly, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu machriz Allah Begila, but Hashem will make sure that everybody finds out about it, so that you should cause you to do tshuva and not to do this again. Remember, how do I know that? It says over here, the Ovar Allah Ruach Kina, that the husband suddenly had the spirit that he wanted to warn his wife. Why suddenly did he have this feeling? Allah means sound like it came from Shemayim. Hashem inspired him to do this. Why? Because she was discreetly having an affair, and now suddenly it became public because the husband had to warn, and then they had to be witnesses. Because we had to be witnesses, so then everyone finds out. Now it says the word va'ava means you have to declare it, you have to announce it. How do I know that? Make it public. So by Yitzav Moshe, we had in Parshas Vayakov Moshe announced, and they proclaimed everywhere. We have enough items for the Mishkan. The Shlokish says, "Ain't other my Raveh, the person does not commit a sin unless a ruach shtus, some fallacy came in, some folly came into your mind, thinking, oh, it's only a small aveda." Then it says, "Ish kisiste." Right, the whole thing of Sotah is sister, but the word sister is written with a sin, not with a samach, which is also can be read shaitan. Ish the tish teksi, as if what? As if it's written shaitan. Chassidus explains because every Avera we do, the word Avera means over, hey, we're moving away from Hashem. And regardless of what Avera you do, you're always moving away from Hashem. But somehow or another, we delude ourselves thinking, oh, Avodah Zarah is a terrible thing. This Avera is not so big, not so big Avera. In fact, that's what Teshuvah is. That Teshuvah is Tashuv Hey. We bring the Hey back from Hashem's name, and we reunite his name by doing Teshuvah, coming back home. So Rabbi Shmuel. Why do we believe a single witness when it comes to Sotah? For example, saying that she became tameh. She's like lying with David. There's grounds to it. He warned her, and she was alone with the guy. So therefore, there's grounds to believe it. The then comes along a witness says that there was an affair. There's grounds to believe it. If you look in the Torah, in the order, it says the word the Olav Ruach Kina is written basastira after they were alone. Alone, it says there that there was kinui. So it sounds like he warned her afterwards. If you read the passage the way it's written, says the Gemara. It says Nistra v'hinitma v'eidem ba, and the next passage says va'avar alav ruach kina afterwards. So the Gemara says v'kiksiva basa stira b'tum, it's written afterwards. Amalei va'avar is past tense, and he already warned her prior. He already warned her. So you more ask every time it says va'avar means it already happened. So that's the question. By Reuven and God and Hafashev Menashe that wanted to live on the other side, Transjordan, and Moshe Rabbeinu said that you have to go in front of the army, before the vanguards, and help them in Israel. And says they va'avar lachem kol cholus. The way you were translating va'avar means they already went there. They haven't even crossed yet the Jordan River in Yisrael. Va'avar they already went before. What does that can't be? Hachinami also. So you tell me every time it says va'avar means it already happened. So you must know. They have to look at the context. Moshe Rabbeinu says, you cannot go back home until the entire land is conquered before Hashem. Then obviously he's talking about the future. Then you go back home. It's clear it means the future. Here, but here we can learn that means the future. It doesn't make sense. But what after she already had an affair and after she was alone with a guy, then he warns her. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, the warning took place before, so you have to look at the context. What's the point of warning after it already happened? A person will not warn his wife unless some spirit from above comes. Now, is that a positive thing or a negative thing? It says, some spirit dawned upon him. The king said he warned his wife. My ruach, what kind of spirit are we talking about? Rabbanan say ruach tumah. Rabbanan say it's a bad thing. In other words, it sounds like our Mishnah. We don't want you to warn your wife. And Rav Ashi says ruach tada. On the contrary, you're inspired because you want to make sure to remove all the suspicions and so on. So and also maybe she's a bit promiscuous. So therefore, it's coming to bring sneers into the world and show bias into the world. So it's a positive thing, which means he holds like the opinions that it's a good thing for the husband to warn in that situation. The kina is it's allowed to. There's no mitzvah, but there's no other. There's nothing negative about it. Kiva says choiva that you have to. So this argues with our Mishnah, and that's why we paskin that it's a good thing, or that's a good thing to to stem this kind of behavior. Now, if it makes sense. If you tell me it's a ruach tumah, you tell me you're allowed to, or you should. A person should bring in a spirit of the Yetzer Hara into his life. What for? Gufel, let's analyze it. The shows it means optional. And Akiva says it's chayv, it's a mitzvah. Akiva, it's a mitzvah. We'll have three arguments. Rabbi Shmuel says it's optional, and Akiva says it's a mitzvah. Lo yitama, it says that a kohen can be metama to his sister. She's still not married yet. I'm married with his sister. It says lo yitama to her. She metama. It's optional. Rabbi Shmuel. And Akiva is a chayv, it's a mitzvah. Argument number three: if you have an evet kanani, you have a goyish slave, working forever. It's optional. But Kiva says chayva, but you have to. Taish already asked if there are 613 mitzvahs. 3 mitzvahs missing according to Rabbi Shmuel. 3 mitzvahs are only optional. So the answer is that the other as we'll see, Rabbi Kiva learns other things. Those mitzvahs are optional. Those mitzvahs are Kiva holds other things which are optional. Bishmol holds they'll be mandatory, and so on. So whatever for the 3 that he says optional, he has 3 others that make it mandatory. But the Ramban in the beginning of his sefer, who he argues the Rambam with count 613, he actually wants to say that this 613 is only according to one opinion. Absam Loi will have an Eddie Marmakas, and he says that there are actually a lot more than 630 mitzvahs probably, because if you hold that Rabbi Shmuel says Torah Tzivalona Moshe, Torah is Gematria 611. 611 Moshe gave us, and 2 we heard from Hashem. Total 613. But the Rabbanan who argue with that Medrash and Medrash Chazis, and they say that no. They say that all 10 dibros we heard from Hashem, which means they don't dash in Torah Tzivalona Moshe, which means there's no limit how many mitzvahs there are. There could be 500, there could be 1,000. We don't even know. And that's Ramban's argument with the Rambam there. But we generally accept that there are tayag mitzvahs. We all follow Rav Samlai, because in the Gemara proper, we don't find anywhere where the Gemara argues with Rav Samlai how the total number of mitzvahs. Is Rabbi Shmuel arguing the entire Torah? Rabbi Shmuel says every mitzvah is optional, and Rabbi Kiva says every mitzvah is obligatory. The matter of chayv, that's what's going on here. No. These 3 are exceptions, and each one of them is a pasuk. You argue about a pasuk. It says the kine is ishta, the shus is optional. Rabbi Shmuel. And Rabbi Kiva says chayva. What's going on here? My time with Rabbi Shmuel. Why does he say it's optional? He holds the following Tana. Because the Torah says, you're not allowed to hate another person. So you would have thought, even your own wife, you're not allowed to, as we said before, you're creating a wedge. Maybe you're not allowed to. In this case, you shouldn't also go ahead and mourn it because you're creating animosity. No, you're allowed to. Rabbi Shmuel said the Torah is saying you're allowed to, because you would have thought it's forbidden. The kine sisha. Rabbi Kiva holds kine achin in the It says twice kine in the Torah. It says by this case here. One of them to tell you you're allowed to, and the second one to tell you not, but actually the mitzvah as well. Rabbi Shmuel says the second kine proves nothing. I did the bayil michta, because the Torah has to write in the next pasuk vihi nitmas. Because it says next pasuk, and she committed adultery, she became tamei. Vihi loy nitma, or maybe she didn't, because we're not sure. We don't know what happened. It's a suffix. Ksiv nami. Therefore, it says the kine is ishbet. And it says the Kine Yishmer. Rabbi Shmuel has a general rule. Even though sometimes the Torah says something twice, repetitive, if there's something in that pasuk that is novel or that's a new, then you can bring other things which are repetitive. Any pasuk that's repeated, was repeated because of something that's new there. Lo yitamba. The next thing, Lo Yitama, the sister who's unwed, he's the Kohen's allowed to marry. Shus Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says you have to. My time by Rabbi Shmuel. Why in this case he says it's not a mitzvah you're allowed to? Because I would have thought a Kohen couldn't. Like I just see it says Emel Kohen. I don't know. Martin every time it starts off a Kohen cannot go to any funeral, and then it lists the 6 relatives. I would have thought, but I has tell you Lo Yitama, but your sister you're allowed to. And Rabbi Kiva said therefore it's optional, but the Torah had to tell you that. Rabbi Kiva, we already know it says in the pasuk that you're relative, that you can go ahead, you can be metama. So why does it have to add lo yitama to her? You should be metama. This makes it a mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel, lo metama. You know what it says lo metama? To her you can be metama. The ain't metama leverah. We already had in Nazir that if the sister is not a full, in the body is not fully intact, only let's say limbs, he's not allowed to be metama. That's what we need lo yitama. And Rabbi Kiva, he's right. You need lo yitama to tell you about not 2 limbs. Im kain lichter rachman lo. Say lo to her, and no lo to her body is intact. The lishta yitama. Why say again the word yitama? It's repetitive. It's a mitzvah. Rabbi Shmuel says the same rule again. I did the cost of law. Once you have to repeat the word law to tell you that only while her full body is intact, you're allowed to repeat another word. The Torah then has a habit of adding more words, even though it's not necessary, as long as the general thrust is novel. Look, called Pasha number Nisha. Any Pasha is repeated. But once there's something new there, you can repeat it and add other things as well. Third argument is regarding slaves. It's optional. Rabbi Kiva says it's mandatory. My time with Rabbi Shmuel. Why does Rabbi Shmuel say that you're allowed to keep your Eved, but you want to dismiss him, you can. You want to free him, you can. I did. It says in the pasuk, the 7 nations, you're not allowed them live. So I would have thought. And then you have to put them away. That's what that you're allowed to. But what do you mean allowed to? Why you allowed to? You have to kill the Zion and 7 nations who lived in Israel. Why are you allowed to keep one of them as an Eved? We're talking about the Mishra Echad Mekol. No, we're allowed to in certain circumstances. We are one of a foreign nation, because by Goyim we don't go after the father, we go after the mother. So one of the the other way around. We go after the father. That if one of the foreign nations marries a woman from the local, from Yisrael, you're allowed to keep the son, because we go after the father, it's considered a stranger. The if a stranger marries a local woman, but have a kid, the Torah needs to tell you that you're permitted to have such a kid working for you. Not that it's a chiyuv, you're not allowed to set them free. The Tanya, we learned, how do you know if someone from a foreign nation, Shabbat Kananis, that had that married a local woman, that had a kid, you're allowed to buy them because you go after the father. It says the pasuk, also, it says from the goyim around you, you can purchase avodim, and then, but obviously not the locals. And then it says, also from the locals, that live with you, tikna you can buy. What do you mean? So certain locals you can buy. So that means that what? That if a foreigner marries a local, you can buy their kids. They're called Bnei Shavim, they're moving in. Yochai would have thought Afa Knani the other way around. If the father was a local, she came marry one of the a foreign woman. You're allowed to buy that person. You're allowed to purchase this person as an Eved. That only those who are born in your land, that the mothers from here and the fathers from abroad, but not if the father is local. Rabbi Kiva says, I agree with you with that principle, but I say you can learn that from the word mayhem, from them. Nafka. Why do you have to add the word you should always keep them as a slave? Therefore, it must be that you're not allowed to set them free. Rabbi Shmuel, behem v'loy ba'achechem. No, we need the word behem. That they can, what do you call it? Only a goy you're allowed to have as a permanent Eved, but not a Jewish person. Rabbi Kiva, how does he know? Misay for the Kronafka, from the very end of the pasuk. In the end of the pasuk, it says, "Uba'achechem," and your brethren, Bnei Yisrael, ish ba'achiv, one and the other, you shouldn't work them hard. So I know from there already you can't have a Jewish slave in that way. Rabbi Shmuel, once it has to tell you about the brethren, it can say also the word behem, even though behem is repetitive, not to teach you that you have to work with them all the time. It's just to tell you you're allowed to. And why repeat it again? Because Rabbi Shmuel has a rule. The Torah Rabbi Shmuel, call Pasha Shenem Rabbi Nisha. Any Pasha is repeated like Nisha Rabbi Shmuel. There's a reason why it's repeated, and then you can also repeat other things as well. There's a nusa bebesa. If there's adultery going on in a home, it's kikaya like worms to sesame seeds. They feel it at home, then the whole house is sort of falls apart. Took for base, there's anger in the house. Like sesame seeds, again, like a woman's sesame seeds, and it destroys the very fabric of this relationship. But the Gemara says it's much worse if it's much worse if it's the wife that has a terrible temper. But if the man has a terrible temper, it's not so bad. Why not? Doesn't actually the Mephoshim don't explain why not, but assume that he can go outside, get some fresh air. Also because she takes care of the house, and if she doesn't take care of the house, the whole house falls apart. The husband doesn't really take care of the house, so if he gets angry, it's at the end of the world. In the beginning, before the Eden sin, Israel, the Eibush rest in every Jewish home. It says, he was in your midst. Once they sinned in Arayas, they no longer had the laws of morality. And the Shechina left them. It says, the Eibush said they shouldn't see by you any error, any misbehavior. and until you come back to your normal way. So the Abishah left them. The Abishah the one who's witnessed what's going on inside their home. I'm going to show about Nachmani. If you do one bit perform one mitzvah in this world, when you when somebody goes to the Elam Haba, they'll go to Gan Eden. The mitzvah is going to wrap itself around you and lead you into Elam Haba. And the mitzvah will scream out. It says that this particular mitzvah is going to travel, is going to go before you, and your righteous mitzvahs, and is going to proclaim that you did a mitzvah. If you commit a sin, that a sin is going to wrap around you, will go before you. So what happened if you did a lot of mitzvahs and a lot of Vedas? It'll be a big screaming match. It says, that they will wrap around you on your way, that Yalu Batoyu, the Yevedu, you'll go to the other place and you will be lost. It says, not only will it lead in front of you, wrap around you, but it'll be tagged to you like a dog. It says that that Yosef Potiphar tried to seduce Yosef, but Leishamai refused to listen to her. Lishkav Etzla, to lie next to her and to be with her. What's Lishkav Etzla and to be with her? It's two different things. Lishkav Etzla Hazard, to be with her physically in this world, and Haba, to join her in the world to come, because if he doesn't have Ada, she'll stick with him the whole time, and he will have to follow her in her place. And as we learn, Shahaya Bedin, we learned in the Mishnah, it makes sense. It says in the later Mishnah, I would have thought, my Edus or the Shain, the first witness, which is about the warning. Let's say, sorry, let's say the Edus or the Shain, when they were discreet, they were alone. It was stira. And let's say there were witnesses. Nothing happens because she goes to the Mishkan, drinks the water. If she's pure, if she's innocent, nothing will happen. So she'ena sar to Israel doesn't forbid it forever. You need two witnesses. I would have thought that surely if somebody comes along and said that she committed adultery, which means she can never live with the husband again, you would think surely you would need two witnesses. That comes to Asr forever. Surely you need two witnesses. It says the aid ain ba. It says in the pasuk the aid ain ba, as you said before, that there were no two witnesses, but one witness there was. As long as there was one witness, the Torah tells us clearly it asks it. So now let's make a kalvachem in the converse. If one witness is enough to declare that she's tamei, surely one witness should be enough to say that they were stira and force her to drink the water. So let's make kalvachem the other way around. Ma'ata now, ma'edus acharenu when it comes to tumah. Shasati Israel also forever. Miskaya meilecha one ain't enough. Edus are the shayna shayna sati Israel. The first witness, no, the stira that doesn't ask her forever. It's much easier. Surely a single witness can put her in that situation. They should be us to each other, forbidden to each other until she drinks the water. It says it says the word bo, and we dash. It says kimatza be'eres davar. Sorry, it says the word by erva. It says the word davar. And elsewhere it says whenever you want to give testimony, you need minimum of two witnesses. Or why you have to say three? We'll have more marcus. But it says the word davar there, so we learn that mad davar lahal apishnaim edim. Generally, you need two witnesses. Afkan apishnaim edim. Over here also, you need two witnesses. When it comes to erva, you want to start initiate the whole thing. Generally, you need two witnesses. Says the Gemara. I don't understand why you have to introduce davar. We already learned before. We have the word ba. But only when it comes to tumah, 1/8 is enough. But everything else you need two. So why do you have to introduce me this thing about davar? Says you want to high michimatzabo every davar nafka nafka. We learned that before, just before the previous page. The word ba, that only when it comes to tumah, one witness is enough. But when it comes to stira, you need two. And ba v'lei b'kinui, ba v'lei b'stira. You need two both, as Yeshua said. You need two by kinui, by warning. You need two by stira. So when it says you're right. That's exactly what Gemara meant. That's exactly what. We don't mean the word davar. We mean with the emphasis on the word ba. But what we're saying is the tuma ba'alma. But generally, you want to establish that a woman committed adultery, or as anybody committed adultery, is below kinos without any warning, without any stira, then you need to with and how do we know that? It says here came much better davar, but generally you always need two. The only exception is by Sotah, because you already gave her a warning and she was alone in solitude, and then you have a single witness that says that something happened, all right. Then there's grounds to believe. Otherwise, you always need two. But stira and kidney, you need two for the word ba. Only here, sufficient 1/8, but not the other ones. Okay, we'll continue, Mitzvah Shem.